Hey, welcome to the re-recording of the State of the Industry for our great lodging friends. Uh, if you're wondering, didn't they already do this last week and what's going on? We did. We unveiled the State of the Industry to the industry last week. Unfortunately, if you were on that call, my computer died right in the middle of it, and you saw me run off screen and then saw me enter into another team member's office, and so we wanted to re-record this and get it right. So as you can rewatch you're not distracted by my sprinting abilities in the middle of the meeting. With that, thank you so much for joining us. You're going to hear today the state of the industry is in a real tough shape, the toughest it's been since I've taken over as the CEO of the Hospitality Association. And we really want to lay out why and talk about why and address that is a serious situation we're dealing with. At the end, we are going to talk about, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And we will talk about that as well. With that, let's just get started with all the data you see today is going to come from either all the great information that our data team has gathered over the course of the year, or our national partners who have great research teams, or one of the many of the research folks we work with, and or what you're seeing up now, which is on our 2026 CEO roundtables. So the first part of this year, I traveled all around the state and in 34 separate meetings, met with people from Tri-Cities to Burlington and from Vancouver to Spokane, and of course the Puget Sound area and all things in between. Talked to over 280 operators. In those meetings, we asked them a series of questions to determine what's going on, what are the serious issues, and so everyone got a chance to get their voices heard. The real striking part of the information, I think, really sets the tone for the entire conversation today. One of the questions we asked is, what's the current state of the industry in your mind? And what we learned was 70% of those who attended either said the industry is currently broken and no longer functional, or it is in such dire shape that we're only going to tread water even when the economy recovers. I think that's a shocking number. When you look at how many people are in the hospitality industry, just the law of large numbers tells you 70% of any number is big. It even gets more shocking. Only 2% thought the industry was doing well. 2% of a large number is just amazing to see. You would have thought just surely by some level, 5 to 10% of the industry is doing okay, even if the larger set was struggling. But I think this really makes the point for us that what we have on our hand is really a recipe for disaster. And people are going to want to say, why? What's the one issue that's making all this bad? Well, the reality is it's all these issues that are combining to make our operators' life such a struggle. And so we're going to walk through many of the ingredients of this recipe for disaster that we have today. And how do we move forward with that? So with that idea, it really starts, let's start with tourism. One of the main ingredients I'd say is tourism. It is lodging. We all know what a huge part of tourists who bring money from out of state and spend it here to create jobs for us and create tax dollars for us is one of the, if not the key ingredient to making lodging work. Canadian tourism, and we're one of the most Canadian dependent states in the country, is down 26%. And international visits, and as the gateway to Asia, we've long depended on great international travel to help and sustain our economy, is down 16.5%. These are numbers and greater numbers than we see in other places, and it's having a real impact to lodging. I think this is really interesting because people are saying, okay, it's slow now, but just wait, World Cup is coming. If you're watching this after, we will have updated numbers on what happened actually with World Cup, but this is recorded before World Cup started. Everyone has said World Cup is going to be our savior. And not everyone, a lot of elected officials and public things said, times are tough, but just wait, World Cup's coming. World Cup has not setting up to be the boom we'd hope for. And so it's certainly not going to be the 7 World Cups or 7 Taylor Swift concerts that people have said we can expect to see with our World Cup games in the area. In fact, right now, we're projecting to be year over year down in June during that World Cup period. What's especially shocking is when you look at other areas of the country, you see many of them are seeing an increase. And while you're seeing national news that World Cup isn't going to be the 7 Super Bowls in each community, they are seeing an increase. And so, Houston, Dallas, Atlanta, all up nearly 70% or more. And Seattle is the only of the World Cup city in the US that's actually projecting a year-over-year down. So while World Cup is a great thing and we're really excited to have them here, and the chance to show off the Puget Sound across the world is awesome and great, and in no way would I say I'd rather not have World Cup here. It is not going to be the savior that a lot of people were hoping it would be in a real tough economy. You combine that with convention slowdown, and we're looking at a drop in convention business and the amount of travelers and tourists and overnight guests we see bring into this. We're seeing a slowdown in the convention business, specifically in the Seattle area. And if you look at Seattle area main metrics year over year, you see things are down. And that's another reason that you combine international tourism down with travelers down. And one of the main problems with that is our average daily rate is lacking. So your average daily rate, if you're watching this as I just want to learn about how's lodging doing, average daily rate is one of the three main metrics of the lodging industry. And that's the average amount a Washington hotel can charge for overnight. If you look what's happening across the West Coast, you generally see that the average daily rate is increasing to match the cost increases that we're seeing across the country. And in the United States, you see, even though it's a lower overall number, you see the number is gradually increasing. In Washington, you basically see it flat to slightly down. And when we are not able to keep our rates up with inflation, this adds to one of these key recipes of disaster that we are struggling with. I mentioned it a little before, but all this is against the backdrop of rising prices. Whether it's our property and operations and maintenance costs being up over 23%, our insurance costs, which is certainly a major trouble, being up over 111%. Insurance has just skyrocketed. These costs are putting these pressures on how do I meet my bills when I'm not getting the price I need and consumer traffic is down. You combine those cost increases with what we're seeing on labor costs, and it even gets more compounded. This was brought to us by one of our members who said, this is what I'm dealing with. And with Seattle minimum wage really being the baseline for wages in hospitality, that even if you make above that, the cost pressures to raise everybody at that same level remain there. Seattle minimum wage is jumping at a rate far higher than Seattle inflation, which means our costs are driving and the general inflation is not nearly as high, which then you see that RevPAR, that revenue per available room, as we have to try to keep out rates decrease. That right there is just an awful mix of lines. Costs are up above inflation, and our revenue is down. Which is why for many operators, and particularly owners, you hear them say times are awful, which gives us another really interesting ingredient in what we have as a recipe for disaster. For years, we never worried about expenses and those things because lodging was such a business that as long as RevPAR, that revenue per available room, was great, and the occupancy rates and average daily rates were good, let's manage those numbers, we'll be okay. But for the first time really in the 20 years I've been around, it's no longer the case. And so what's happening is that owners are seeing expenses rise at such a rate and their top line numbers not anywhere keeping up. They're feeling like the sky is falling and that times are just awful. But the challenge is the general people that you meet when you walk into a hotel or are active at a local level, or typically the people who are more active in an individual community, the general managers, they're used to 20 some years of, hey, I manage top line, the rest follows. And therefore they're still saying RevPAR is okay, occupancy is okay, and ADR, while not great, we're hanging in there. That disconnect between owners and GMs is a serious gap in trying to come up with the answers, because the GMs are not aware of the urgency that they're feeling, and the owners are feeling at an all-time pressure. So it's hard to communicate change. It's hard to communicate to the public. It's hard to communicate what's going on when the industry itself is not unified on what's occurring. And we have to come up with a way, whatever the answer is, to be on the same page as an industry. This, again, a little bit more deeper look into that. I think the GMs are saying, look at my industry occupancy trend, look at my RevPAR trend, look at my short-term momentum. I'm making operational improvements. I am making change. I'm optimistic. And then the owners that we just talked about are seeing these rising confluence of issues, and they're just really in a dark place, a lot of them that you talk to. A huge amount of maturing loans occurring now in the next few years. are creating what experts call critical stress. Properties that are not generating sufficient net operating income to cover their debt obligations. And this is where the rubber really meets the road in the lodging industry is, okay, I didn't make money this year. When my loan isn't up, I still have time to correct. But when my loan starts coming up and my cash starts crashing and I can't meet my debt obligation, then things really turn. What's really interesting on this one is a lot of national folks will say that's happening everywhere. What you're going to hear from Washington hotels is because our expenses are so much higher than what they experience in other areas. And that ADR has really dragged behind what we're seeing around the country and the West Coast. We're disproportionately critically stressed. And you hear a lot of operators who go to national conventions or national franchisee meetings or AHOA, which is the Asian American Hotel Owners Association, and their counterparts are simply not at the level of distress and anxiety that we're feeling here in Washington. 30% of hotel loans are coming due in 2026, and they're facing the banks with the knowledge that the property values are down, the interest rates are higher. What this really means to your average operator, to your average person, is so what? That's a lot of financial mumbo jumbo. I don't really know what that means to me. Well, what it means is that hotel, to stay afloat, now has to generate a net of $300,000 to $1 million increase in the upcoming year to meet their financial obligations. How are they going to face that kind of debt service in a given year with those confluence of issues? And even at facing that debt only happens if they can find financing to begin with. So if you meet your average hotel owner, and the vast majority of them are independent franchisees right here in our own community or independent operators, and they're a little grumpy these days, they're trying to wring their fingers and figure this out. Additional national changes to the stress that lodging are feel are these generational changes that are reshaping the industry. A lot of people, when they look at this, say, what's going on with the Airbnbs and VRBOs and other folks? How are they impacting the industry? And the answer is really generational. When you look at boomers, they really prefer hotels over rentals. Only 34% of boomers prefer to use a VRBO or Airbnb. However, when you look at the next generation of customers, 62% of them would rather have a vacation rental than a hotel. And so the model and the debt that the operators are stuck with against all the backdrops in Washington are facing these additional generational changes of a shifting marketplace. And so that is another key ingredient in their critical stress. And then probably the one that you hear the most about, because it's probably one of the things we can do the most about, is this dysfunctional relationship with government. The amount of elected officials and people in our community who look at the increase in the number of lawsuits, the increase in the headaches and the stress of regulations, the lack of action to make our communities safer and want to draw people into our communities, and the growing number of local mandates, and then the disinterest in making the businesses work. This is creating a real dysfunctional relationship between the industry and government. And unfortunately, it spirals because these things happen and the concerns are dismissed, and the operators then get frustrated and angry. Then elected officials get back, and it is that classic design of a dysfunctional relationship where people start blaming each other, and neither side engages in solutions to try to help both sides win. And we're in this dysfunctional relationship with government that we have to find a solution for. I'm sure we're missing a couple ingredients, and for some operators, they'll say, "What about this?" or "What about that?" and they'll be absolutely right for their business, and maybe even the broader industry demand. We're constantly asking, "What are we missing or what I'm not understanding?" But even at a minimum, I think you're looking at a strong recipe for disaster when you look at the drop in tourism demand, the drop in convention demand, ADR continue to lag all national trends, and not keeping up with rising expenses, an industry that's not communicating clearly its distress across its own system, and then a refinancing crossroads with generational changes in demand, and a government that it doesn't seem to be able to communicate with. We have to be able to change this recipe. And whenever we talk about this stuff, I'm sure I do this with my own team and my own kids. You brought me a problem. All right, let's work on solutions, because whining and complaining gets us nowhere. So whether it's easy or not, we've got to start coming up with a recipe for success. And that's what we want to talk about next is, okay, we have the issues, Anthony. So what? What are we going to do about it? Well, one, we've already started. We have launched the statewide tourism marketing effort. The governors this year signed a bill that hopefully, when fully enacted, will raise $25 million a year uh, in tourism dollars to market people to come to Washington. If you can see that little chart in the right hand of the screen there, you'll see just how much Washington has lacked in recruiting people to come to Washington from around the country. While our partners around the West Coast are spending, and because they're spending, they are attracting more and more people to their region, partially reflective in what they're able to get in occupancy, RevPAR, and ADR. And so uh, this is a moment of hope that we can work towards and we can pursue. The assessment bill is a great thing, but it's a starting point. The whole industry is going to have to come together and decide how to raise this money. And so this next summer, lodging operators and restaurant operators and recreation operators from all different industries are going to be coming together and deciding we have the opportunity to do a self-assessment to bring guests and group marketing to Washington so we can increase this. What does that look like? So we are going to have to work hard to make this happen, and hopefully go into next year with a proposal that's in front of the industry that will help make this possible. For all the challenges in the industry, I think AI might be the one actually proven place where we're starting to see people use it and have business improvements. When I went out on those road trips and visited cities across the state, I was expecting the industry to treat AI as, oh, yeah, that's something I have to do one day or not actively use it. I'll be honest, I was shocked. 77% of hotel operators are already using AI tools, and they're using them for all kinds of things, from P&L analysis to revenue management. The ideas and the creation from the clever way that the team members are using to better address guest issues, to the clever way that operators are using it to solve problems, to simply setting up better uh, measuring sticks to move against. They just seem to be coming up with more and more creative ideas, and the industry is embracing this. This is only going to grow. And with that, on the road, they gave the association a lot of ideas of what they need to fully make AI feasible in the industry. So stay tuned. We are working on training. We are working on a way to share best practices and a way to provide prompts to each other to make things stronger. And so your team here at the association is really excited to say, okay, here's something we can tangibly work on to tangibly make the industry better. So let's see, now that we have all your feedback, how we can move forward. Another thing we can do is really invest in emerging technology, whether it's kiosks or mobile check-ins or other stuff. Uh, I think 7 years ago we said, "Hey, technology is going to be a key part of the industry," but the problem was a lot of guests are not ready for it. Well, now as the younger guests are becoming more and more the majority of our consumers, they like things like this mobile checkout and kiosk-based check-in and digital interactions and the ability to make their local stay more personalized. And so we're seeing a generation that might have initially resisted technology saying, "Yeah, please make my stay better and more affordable. I'm in." That's making these changes more feasible for the industry to move forward with. And so uh, don't give up just because it didn't work the first time. These are areas where we're seeing true improvements that can make our life better. I mean, one example of this, and I was back at the national trade show, and there's millions of these, but there was a commercial version of a Roomba that was basically a robot vacuum. And if you're struggling to find housekeepers and the housekeeping shortage continues to be a challenge, the ability to have all the halls vacuumed in the middle of the night, so guests wake up with a clean carpet in the morning, and have it be a functional way. Now, while robots won't be all the answers, and this may not work for other properties or some properties, the point is these are the kind of ideas that we ought to be thinking about, testing out, seeing what's coming on live in the market that can truly help us make better. Generational change, as I said on the red cards, on recipes for disaster, can be a challenge, but they can also be a benefit. And while I think the number was 70% of, it was nearly 70% of uh, millennials prefer VRBOs and Airbnbs to hotels. The reality is they don't believe they provide a better value. In fact, that number drops much closer to boomers. Only 38% of people under 35 believe short-term rentals offer a better value. Um, and so that tells us if we can meet them where they're at, there's opportunity here. And they value travel, which is really our business, at a much higher level than any other generation. 64% of them would take a job with less pay if it had more flexibility to do more travel. And as we struggle with labor costs and we struggle with finding people who want to work the hours, only 5% of Gen Z prefer to speak with hotel staff over other folks. And so, yes, they provide challenges, but they're also providing opportunity that we need to listen to and be aware of. I think we have to never stop on this. And so, well, you've had a hotel, hotels have been around for 200 years. Have they really changed that much? Yes. And they'll continue to offer more and more things we can do. I think one of the things that was really interesting when we talked with folks around the state is a lot of GMs and management folks and owners said, well, we have new technology, but they're not talking to each other. So we need to see all those systems we purchase all the way through so the integration is there. 45% of hotels say fragmented tech prevents true efficiency that we're seeking on. And then you throw in ideas like energy management, dynamic scheduling, and other things. There are things we can do to lower costs and be more efficient. And that drive to do so in today's economic reality just can't stop. We talked about this one at the end of the recipe for disaster. But again, how do we turn this into a recipe for success? We need to be able to communicate to the community that when you see and you drive by that Best Western or Hilton Garden Inn or name your brand, it's probably owned high likely 90+% owned by a local franchisee, someone in your community that this is their American dream and this is what they're pursuing. And in that, every time they get a guest in there and they spend $100 to spend the night, they're spending another $200+ in our community, going to local restaurants, local shops, and all those things provide jobs. And the collection of our industry here in Washington does over $2.4 billion in wages, and collectively in what we support, over 47,000 jobs. So we have a story to tell that shouldn't be dismissed of, oh, that's corporate America. A large number of our hotels are actually independent, but even those who are not are locally owned and they're providing true benefit. We got to be a little more aggressive in communicating it because right now it's not understood. And we're symbiotic. So while we talk about our improvement to the community, our reality is we're never going to do well if our streets aren't safe, if our costs are too high, if we don't have a vibrant dining community around us, and our community is not doing well. And so we, unlike any other industry, simply just can't move to North Carolina or do manufacturing in China or do anything else. We've got to make this work. That's why you see 84% of operators want to work towards stronger local communities. And 80% of them are willing to invest personal time to move it forward. So when we talk about community engagement, this is a symbiotic thing. We can't be successful without community success. And our community so values and needs the success that we offer in tax dollars, jobs, wealth, and otherwise when we're doing well. This should be an industry where working together should be easy. And we got to figure out the right mix to make that happen. And all of that leads to we need a partner in government and we need to move from being an antagonistic relationship with government. Hey, restaurant for table for two, hospitality and elected officials, we need a different communication style. We need to figure out how to talk to each other where we're not losing our tempers when continuing things happen to make our lives even harder. And you need to hear us that we're under critical times. So many people are under critical stress. Real jobs, real careers, real opportunities, real American dreams are on the line here because we're at a breaking point. That does not have to be negative. When functional families work well together, you get these issues out, you talk about them, you communicate them with them, and you have a partnership where people are heard and they're working on solutions versus being done to and ignored. We need to work towards that, and that's got to be a key part of our recipe for success. We'd love to hear what we got right and what we got wrong. And even as we lay this out, none of this is easy. We are in such desperate times that what we're facing has real challenges. And we really need to collectively to figure out how to address this. So it's not as simple as increasing tourism dollars or adapting generations or building a community and turning a relationship around. There's a lot of stuff that needs to go into it. We'd love to hear from you. What are we missing? And we'd love to hear from you the things we can do together to build a better lodging industry and hospitality industry moving forward. And we're here to help. We've got lots of consultants available to you for free that you can talk to and work with. And please feel free to have your territory manager on speed dial. And hey, I got a leak and I can't get a hold of the person to patch it. Or hey, I don't know how to handle, excuse me, a new social media strategy. I want to bounce an idea off someone, or how to use new tech or other things. We have experts available to help you, and that's why they're here. And they are passionately believe in our industry. So get your territory manager's number, put them on speed dial, and consider them part of your team. And use our experts and knowledge and awareness to try to help you. And by the way, the more times the questions get asked, the more we develop an answer for it, the more that helps the next person, even if we don't know the first time. Hey, let us know how we did. We laid out a recipe for disaster from listening to you, and what our best gathering was of the recipe for success. But one of our core objectives is to be the industry's primary source of information. Let us know. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? What else should be included? What else should we be talking about? Thanks so much for listening in today and allowing us to serve an industry that we love so much. Have a great one and see you next time.